Um, oh, I just got the Zoom thing saying it was recording. Um, but yeah, thank you for saying all that nice stuff about me. I'm very happy to be here. You were, in fact, the reason I took more creative writing classes. Um, so yeah, you were probably one of the more influential professors in my time at Georgia Southern. So, um, cool. I guess we can get started. You might have seen my cat come up. That's because she is very Velcro-y to me. And if I leave her outside the room, she will probably start yelling. So it'll probably be less distracting to have her in the room. Um, Hopefully she won't be too obstructive, but just warning, she is in here. So yeah, my name is Alex Chapman. I work as a quality manager at Epic Systems. So yeah. Here's just kind of like an outline of what I'm going to talk about. So first, I'm going to introduce myself and the company I work at, and then I'm going to talk about how I got here, what I do as a quality manager, and some of the other roles at Epic, if that doesn't really seem interesting to you. And then I'll talk about why I work here and why I enjoy working here. So yeah, so first of all, who am I? I'm Alex Chapman. I graduated from Georgia Southern in December 2021 with a degree in writing and linguistics, like Laura Favalari said. Um, I am a quality manager at Epic Systems. Quality management basically meaning I ensure the software is high quality. It's mostly testing, but it also encompasses a lot more responsibilities that I'll expand on later. I personally mostly work with software accessibility and customer-facing documentation, which are both things that I'm passionate about, and both kind of stem from my experience with writing, funnily enough, because I actually learned about accessibility for the first time in my technical and professional editing class at Georgia Southern. So that's a fun little fact. I've been here about 2 years. If you do the math, I got hired a few months after graduating because I pretty much applied to places right after graduating. So what is Epic? It's a healthcare IT company. It is not Epic Games. A lot of people confuse that. It is a separate company that is also called Epic. It is based in Verona, Wisconsin. It's a small rural area which is outside the capital of Wisconsin, which is Madison. It's the area itself is very nice. It's like kind of quiet in Verona itself, but it's also pretty close to the city, so there's still things to do. They do require you to relocate, so um, I probably wouldn't have moved there if it wasn't a good place to live. Um, it was founded by Judy Faulkner, who is the woman over here, in 1979. She was just out of college when she created it, and she's still the CEO. She still does presentations to the entire company once a month. And one of her favorite stories to tell is about how the company started in a basement. She brings that up a lot. The name is not an acronym. A lot of people think it's an acronym. It's not. It's actually meant to be like a poem, like epic poems, like the Iliad or the Odyssey. And it's meant to sort of represent the story and journey of someone's healthcare experience. So it does actually have a really cool meaning. And it is privately traded and does not merge, acquire, or get acquired. This is something that Judy is super strict about because she doesn't want shareholders to dictate the direction the company goes. Because once you start mixing that with healthcare, it can sometimes not have great effects. Uh, so, yeah. So, what does Epic actually do? First and foremost, it provides software to health systems and health plans across the country and world. We have a lot of international customers. It is the largest EHR or electronic health record in the country. So there's a good chance your doctor or health insurance uses it. Some of the big ones in Georgia are Piedmont or Blue Cross Blue Shield or Kaiser Permanente, which Kaiser is actually our biggest customer. So we do a lot of special work for them. It's an integrated system. A lot of healthcare software requires you to use a bunch of different programs to make everything work. However, in Epic, it's all kind of in one application for each user. So if you're a doctor, all the stuff you need is going to be in one application on your computer instead of having to jump back and forth between a bunch of them. It also makes it easy to transfer information between Epic instances and also non-Epic instances, because it's all kind of in the same place and all the records are kind of interconnected. We also have a patient portal called MyChart. You might have one. If you have one, I actually work on MyChart. You usually will have one through your healthcare provider or your insurance. I specifically work on the insurance pages. So if you've ever looked at your claims or referrals or other coverage details, that's what my team works on. We're currently making a lot of improvements to that because a lot of the pages are really old and outdated. So I guess look for some cool changes. One of our biggest goals is to make our pages easier to understand for members because insurance is purposely obfuscated in this country. So making sure that people can understand their benefit information has been a very important discussion we've been having in all of our design meetings and testing and pretty much everything we do. So it's something I'm very passionate about. And you can actually see in this map, 79% of the US population has a record in Epic. There's only one state, Alabama, who has less than 40% of people with a Epic record. So how did I get here? So I'm not sure if they still do this, but Georgia Southern kept sending me weekly emails about signing up for Handshake. And I was just kind of like ignoring them because I was already using Indeed and I just didn't see the point in signing up for another one. But I eventually got an email that said that someone had messaged me with a job offer. And I was like, okay. So I signed up for Handshake and read the message. It was from Epic. It was not about quality management. It was actually about project management, which is a separate role, which I'll talk about a little more later. But they were looking for project managers with strong writing skills. So they were basically filtering by like people with writing majors. After I read through the information, I didn't really think that the role was well suited for me because project manager is kind of more of a customer facing role where you're like very actively meeting with people and you're very busy and you travel a lot. And that just wasn't really something I was very interested in. But I was like, well, the pay looks good. And I didn't want to live in Statesboro for very much longer, but I didn't know where I wanted to go. So I was like, well, this might be a good opportunity. Might as well apply even if I don't get accepted. So I applied. I heard back within a couple of weeks for a phone screening. For some context, I was applying for a lot of jobs in various fields like editing, writing, customer service, and a bunch of other random stuff because I was just looking for a job at that point. And this was like right after I graduated. I heard back from exactly two. Well, yeah, two. One was Epic, and one was a random customer service job that actually got back to me a couple of weeks ago. So like 2 years later. So I texted them. I was like, I don't even live in Statesboro anymore. I cannot work there. So yeah, in the phone interview, it was pretty simple. It's basically just basic questions about me and like why I applied and if I had any questions about the process. So very simple, very straightforward. After the phone interview, I went to a role overview. They do role overviews for all of the positions that people apply for. And it's basically to give you a broad overview of what the work looks like. At this point, I was still applying for project manager, so I watched the one about the project management role. And after that, they sent out like a personality and skills assessment. The skills assessment is basically a lot of critical thinking, basic math, and logic and word problems. There was also a coding section, but it asks you for your coding experience. I don't have any coding experience. So mine was more like a logic problem type situation where they like define certain things and then put it in a structure like code. Um, so it was actually kind of fun, that part. The personality assessment was basically just to decide what team you would mesh well with. For me, it also revealed to them that maybe my personality was not good for the project manager role, and instead maybe I should switch gears and apply for the QM role. And I read through the QM job description and I was like, oh yeah, that sounds a lot more like me. So I ended up applying for that. I had my final interview after submitting an application for QM. I honestly thought I failed the skills assessment, but I didn't because they offered me a final interview and I was like, I might actually get this job. And again, like this was just kind of something that I offhandedly applied to because it's like, well, they messaged me, so I might as well. Um, and then I started like really trying to get this job. And I like was practicing for the interview and like looking up common interview questions and just really going for it. Um, so yeah, the only difference from mine and like a typical interview is that I also had the QM role overview at the beginning of mine because I didn't watch it before because I watched the project manager one. But other than that, it was the same as everyone else's. There's two practical sections. There for QM, there's one where you have to kind of talk through your process of how you would theoretically test a really bad website. And then another part where they ask you like, how would you reply to this email? Or like, would you answer this call first or this call first? And then the last part was basically just normal job interview stuff like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? So I did in fact get an offer and I did in fact accept it. I was very excited because I didn't expect to actually make it that far. But I was very excited because I really liked the way the company looked, and I was just super excited. So they also actually fly you up to visit the campus and area. So I did this in around mid-March. I set my start date for April and I had applied in January. So this whole process was pretty quick, especially for like a big company like this. Um, but yeah, they flew me up to see the area and I officially accepted the offer. It was super great. And then I moved up the weekend before my start date and went through the first month of training, which is actually pretty similar to college orientation, but for a couple of weeks instead of like a couple of days. And they also have like 5 months of training after that. So you get like a lot of training. Like you don't need any prior experience. Um, but it was really nice because like especially during like the orientation phase, you get to meet a lot of people, and especially since a lot of people are moving from different parts of the country, it's good because you don't really know anyone. So uh Professor Valeri just asked how many employees does Epic have? I believe right now we have 13,000. When I started, we had 11,000. And we're constantly growing because it's healthcare and healthcare is always going to be around. So we have like this massive auditorium and we recently outgrew that because it fits 13,000 people and we now have more than 13,000 people. So now they have to put some people in the giant auditorium and some people in a slightly smaller auditorium. So yeah. But yeah, now I'm here. This is just the same slide that I started with. Like I said, I applied in January. I got the offer in early March and started April 4th. So this is probably like the quickest turnaround I've heard of applying for like a real job, especially in IT. Um, and also just everyone along the way was super communicative. I got responses pretty quickly, which is not the case for a lot of the places I applied. And I actually recently found out because I do a lot of HR partner stuff now, where I go to like campuses for recruiting, and I also uh, do like candidate dinners and stuff, which is basically where you meet with people who got a job offer. when they fly up to see the area, and they get free dinner. Um, but yeah, since I've become an HR partner, I know now that they also will always let you know if they don't want to move forward. So if they don't want to move forward with your application, they will send you an email and they will tell you that they don't, instead of just ghosting you, which is, again, like, I applied to tons of places and two of them total got back to me at all. So yeah, what is quality management? I kind of talked a little bit about it before, but I'm gonna start going into more detail. So it's an internal role. I mostly work with software developers. I test the software that they create and make them mad because I point out problems with it. We hire all majors for quality managers. So I work with people who are like teaching majors. I've worked with people who are biology majors. There's a lot of English majors on my team, which is interesting because other teams don't have that many. Um, but yeah, they call us the gatekeepers of quality. We get to, like I said, we get to tell developers that there are problems in their code, which is sometimes pretty fun. We also call out potential issues in software processes and documentation in general. An eye for detail is super important with this role. You really got to be able to find like the itty bitty stuff, which as writers and readers, I feel like a lot of us can relate to having an eye for detail. Um, we're often like the last line of defense against some really nasty stuff getting into the software. And especially since it's healthcare, we really want to be catching as much as we can. As writers, we generally tend towards this as we write, self-edit, and workshop each other's writing, like I said. Also, my cat has decided to jump on my chair. And this is our most flexible role with a lot of different responsibilities, focus areas, and transfer opportunities. Sometimes it's called the jack of all trades. I really like this because you can really do what you enjoy or are passionate about, which I'll talk about a little more about some of the areas you can kind of branch out into. Obviously, like I said, the two main areas for me are documentation and accessibility, but there's so much more. And yeah, no prior experience required. I did have work experience, but nothing in IT and nothing in healthcare. And some people don't have any work experience, so they will train you on everything. Like there are 6 months of training. So what do QM do exactly? There are four main categories. The first is testing software. That's like the core work that you do. We write documentation, so we write about what we test so that users and analysts know what to do with the new stuff, and that new stuff is even coming. We review designs. So we developers, before they develop something, they have to make a design for it. So QM will often look at those designs and make sure there's no problems with what they're trying to do before they actually do it. And we also support end users, which end users are the users who use our software. So patients or doctors or scheduling staff. All of these things are super important to making sure the software works, is high quality, and customers understand it. So first I'll talk about testing software. Like I said, this is like the core work of QM. It's mostly what QM are made for. It's what we spend the most of our time doing. It's not what I spend the most of my time doing, but especially when you first start out, like this is what you do most of the time. Quality manager means managing quality. You write a test plan and try to find problems and document them so that they can get fixed. You really are making sure that there are no problems when it goes out. Well, as few problems as there can be. This role requires creativity, which you need creativity to be able to find weird things. You need to really think outside the box to do things that maybe you wouldn't think people would do, but I can speak from what I've seen, and customers will do things that don't make sense. They will do builds that we explicitly tell them is a bad idea. So we have to make sure we're testing all the things that we don't want people to do because they will do it anyways. And we don't want it to like be a really big problem because again, healthcare. Obviously, as writing majors, we've got to be a little bit creative. So that's definitely something that's helped. We also have a good understanding of functionality, which means that you need to have good comprehension skills and good reading and writing skills, because when you're told to test something, there will be like a long written out instructions from the developer that you have to make sure that you understand, or you know how to ask good questions about it, to make sure that you're testing the right thing and you're looking for the right stuff. And finally, making sure that you have clarity and plan in issue writing. This is important because if you don't document what you test well, then people might not understand what you tested. And with issue writing, if you write up an issue that a developer can't understand, then they can't fix it. So good writing skills are definitely important for testing software. So there are a lot of different areas you can focus on if you really enjoy testing software. The main one is testing captain. They basically just oversee all of the development on your team and make sure that everything is getting tested and there aren't too many issues. You can also focus on automated testing. We have some programs that automatically run simple tests like opening a page or pressing a button multiple times a day, so that we don't have to test every single page every single time something changes. People have to write these scripts, so a lot of people make like little teams and just sit down and write a bunch of them, because it really takes a lot off of the physical testing side. And then finally, you can do what's called unscripted testing, which is where you just mess around without a real plan in the system. Teams will usually have someone who coordinates this every week or so to test especially risky development and get more eyes on it. There are even more areas than this, but these are like the big ones. But yeah. So now I'll talk about supporting end users. I'm leaving write documentation for last because I'll probably talk about that one the most. So end users are the people using our software. It could be doctors, insurance staff, patients. My end users are patients since I work on my chart. We want our software to be easy and efficient. We say a joy to use a lot. We want people to not dread looking at it because the UI sucks. So we really try to make the UI nice or nice-ish. Down. This part requires collaboration and communication. I learned a lot of this actually from doing writing workshops, and where you have to sit in a circle and pretty much talk about each other's writing. And this has helped with a lot of meetings and stuff, just being able to talk to a bunch of people at once. We also are required to go on site a certain amount of days each year. It starts out at 6 each year. And this is basically just to observe or help end users who are actually using the software and kind of know like what we're testing for and what we're looking for and what they want. Trips are paid for by Epic, and you're not limited to whatever the minimum is. Like you can go on more if there are trips available. So if you like traveling and you don't want to be like a project manager, QM might be a good middle ground. And finally, advocating for the end users, not just the software itself. We really try to think about how the actual people are using the software and how we can make it better for them rather than just what would be cool. Because if it's something's cool, but it isn't what people need or want, then what's the point? So when it comes to supporting end users, there are a lot of ways to do this. You can be an immersion point person, which basically coordinates those customer trips. If you're more of an internal person like I am, you can focus on something like accessibility and usability or translation and internationalization. I marked these with a star because these are both areas that I actively work on. Making sure the software is accessible to users with disabilities and easy to use for everyone is especially important for our software because it's healthcare. On the staff side, we could potentially cost someone their job if they can't complete a workflow. And on the MyChart side, it could impact how a patient understands their healthcare. I'm the accessibility rep for my team, and I actually became passionate about it from my technical and professional editing class, like I said. Uh, Translation and internationalization, which is abbreviated as I-18N, are important for similar reasons. We have international customers, and even within the United States, not everyone speaks English as their first language. I'm starting to branch out into this side of things, which is super nice because I'm interested in linguistics, and you need to be able to critically think about how the text on the page is structured to make sure that it's translatable. So I think it's really interesting. So now I'll talk about reviewing designs for new development. So all big development has to start as a design. This makes it easier to find potential problems early because they're not actually coded. So you can easily like delete a mockup. But if, sorry, I got distracted by the chat. But yeah, it's easier to like delete a mockup from a design and replace it with another mockup than to like completely recode 100 lines of code. We generally get a lot of different people on designs. There are usually people who interact with customers, functional area experts, and whoever else has a stake in whatever the development is. So this part of the role requires an eye for detail. You really want to find like the little things, and it can be a little difficult when you're just looking at mockups or text. So you really want to be focusing on that. Similarly, critical and proactive thinking. You need to be able to sort of think about how the design would look if it were actually developed, because it's not right now. So really all you have to go off of is like what's in the design and your imagination. So thinking about the potential problems and like what could be better or what could be improved. And finally, the ability to give good feedback. You need to be able to ask good questions and provide feedback in a meaningful, respectful way. Again, writing workshops is very similar to this. You need to be able to point out problems without being mean about it and being able to provide solutions rather than just saying this is bad. And I do see that Joanna Schreiber said that we cover accessible editing guidance in technical and professional editing, and now we also have a usability and UX course on plain language and accessible design. That's actually really cool to hear because plain design is actually something that I have been advocating for a lot with insurance stuff. Like we've been trying to get definitions for insurance terms on a lot of our pages because the average person doesn't really know what a deductible is or what a MOOP is. Like they've probably heard the terms before, but don't have like a good understanding of what they mean. So yeah, plain language is a big thing, especially on MyChart. Like we try to make things readable at a 5th grade level, I believe. So insurance has been one of the biggest problems with that. I feel like every project we have a special group called Patient Health Literacy, who kind of reviews certain texts that people are putting in MyChart. And we have to go to that for pretty much every project because there's just a lot of big words. So yeah, with designs, there's a few things you can get into. There's design triage. This is the main area for designs if you're interested in them. They basically just assign people to look at designs, so you have to know like who would be good on what design. We also have what's called the foundation system. The foundation system is a version of our software that is pre-configured to be our recommendation or example or starting point for new customers. There are many people who work to make sure that the foundation system is actually the ideal setup, which involves a lot of designing and reviewing designs to make sure it is actually what we want customers to have in their system. And then we also have area expert review. Most people are an area expert for at least one thing on their team. So, yep. These are the two that I really do for designs. I do design triage for my team, mostly because it's just easier because I'm on a lot of the designs as the accessibility and internationalization rep. And I also have some like specific functional areas, like premium billing is a big one that I help people with a lot. And I also just, my team is relatively small, so I know like who to put on what designs. So, okay, and finally, the moment everyone's been waiting for, writing documentation. So QM write documentation for the development they test because they have the most experience with it and can most easily explain the information and steps in a way that users can understand. Because like if you have a developer writing documentation, they're going to be putting pieces of code in it and trying to like say things in the most specific technical way possible rather than like the most clear way while still being technical enough for them to do what they need to do in the system. Um, Most of what we have is upgrade documentation for when customers upgrade to a new version and they need to know what's new. They get a bunch of notes at the same time, which have all of the new features. And they can go through them and kind of see like what's changed and what they need to configure and all that fun stuff. We also have some miscellaneous guides with various configuration options that customers can optionally implement. It's all technical writing. We have a style guide and technical communication team. It did take me a while to kind of adjust to having to do more technical writing because I do a lot of fiction writing and like creative nonfiction writing and essay writing. So it was definitely different, but I actually really enjoyed the challenge. And now I'm like one of the most experienced people on my team in terms of like knowing what to like do. Like I've read through the entire style guide because I'm kind of a nerd. Um, so I like know what's in the style guide, and the style guide is very long, by the way. So it is definitely a feat. But yeah, it requires good writing skills, obviously. We're all writers or English majors here, probably. So you probably have good writing skills. Again, like I had a hard time adjusting, but I'm a lot more comfortable now. It took me a couple of months to get used to it, but I actually really enjoy it now. Um, you need to have an understanding of the functionality. Usually you do because you tested it. Um, but yeah, just being able to translate that into something that is readable is very important. And finally, the ability to take feedback. The feedback is very similar to writing workshops again. I know I keep bringing those up. Um, but it really is because you start with like the big picture edits of like how it's organized and like what content is in there and what should be added or removed. And then it slowly kind of like narrows down to the nitty gritty grammar and all that kind of stuff later on. So yeah, with documentation, I'll talk about some of the areas which again are not exhaustive. Like there's a lot of different things you can do with any of the stuff in QM. First one is doc rep and UDL. This is like the big one, the one that everyone thinks of at Epic when you mention like doing documentation work. The doc rep is similar to a testing captain, but for documentation. They basically make sure that all the documentation is moving and correct for the development. They might also handle bigger documentation projects. Upgrade doc leads or UDLs are pretty much like doc reps, but for an entire division. And they have a few extra responsibilities, like they work very closely with testing captains and technical communication, and just make sure documentation as a whole is high quality and moving, and everyone knows what they're doing, including the doc reps. Like my UDL, I actually met with her today. Oh, Yeah, and I actually just got a message. I was just about to bring up the QM editor internship. I thought we had more time because the calendar hold I got was an hour and a half. I'm sorry. Um, but yeah, so QM editor is another one. This is actually a newer one. Right now, most documentation is reviewed by the TechCom team, but they want to get QM involved so that TechCom can focus on like the bigger projects. It's a super competitive position with limited spots, and there's only like 10 people out of the 2,000 QM at Epic. Like UDL's documentation is the bulk of their work. So UDLs and QM editors don't really do a lot of testing as much as like other QM do. They're mostly focusing on documentation. And finally, you can also be a person who assigns and fixes issues with documentation. Customers and Epic employees can give feedback on our upgrade documentation and guides, which are then automatically written up as issues. We want to make sure that our documentation is helpful and accurate. So it's important to fix these issues. So I'm actually all of these things for my team. I'm essentially the go-to person for documentation. People tend to go to me even before the UDL. I triage and fix documentation issues frequently. I actually completely rewrote and reorganized the two biggest setup guides for my teams because they were outdated and hard to follow. That was over 100 pages total. So it was definitely lengthy. I'm also currently interning for the QM editor role in the first wave of QM editors. They announced it at an all QM meeting, and I literally applied during the meeting because I was so excited because editing is actually my dream job. I was applying mostly to editor positions when I was applying to a lot of places. Like I applied to a bunch of places, but I also was mostly applying to editing positions. So I was super excited because that means like my role is now going to be mostly documentation and accessibility, which are both things that I'm very passionate about. And it's pretty easy to like, I guess, get into. And I get a lot done with it. I actually just started actually editing some real documentation that people have written. So it's happening. It's exciting. So yeah, I'll probably just breeze through these because I didn't realize I had less time than I thought I did. So there's some other roles that you can consider if you're not really interested in QM. So project manager is a customer-facing role. It's all majors. You basically help new customers install and get established as customers. It's super dynamic work. It's about 20 to 60% traveling. So if you're really social, if you love traveling, this is probably a good one for you. I am not very social. And like I like traveling, but not that much. So there's technical service. This is also a customer-facing role, but it's more technical. They hire all majors, but STEM is preferred for this one. I like to call them tech support for tech support. They support established customers because usually when users have an issue, they reach out to their organization's IT team. Sometimes it's too complicated for the IT team to fix, so they reach out to Epic, and then the TS will try to find the solution. So it's a lot of troubleshooting, and you actually get to look at the code. They train you on how to read code. You don't need to have like a software developer degree because they like show you how to do that. But yeah, and you also help optimize their systems. So you kind of give them recommendations and make sure they're going in the right direction. I also want to bring up software developer because I remember from my time at GSU, there were a lot of people who were like double majors or minors in computer science and like writing and linguistics or English. It's an internal role, work very closely with quality management. It's super technical. You have to know code. You have to have a comp sci or adjacent major or minor. And it is full stack development. We use a lot of coding language. I don't know all of them, but it is front end and back end. There's also the training role. They teach our software to end users and new Epic staff. They hire all majors. They work directly with those who will be using the software. So it's everyone. Like I went to classes when I first started to get certified in my application, and there were customers in that class. So they are mixed classes. The trainer is presenting to everyone, So being able to communicate well and explain things and all that kind of stuff is super important. And finally, technical communication. So this is an internal role as well. It's rarely hiring externally. It's usually people transfer from QM to technical communication. Like every single person I know on technical communication is like a transferred QM. So this is like a good growth path. I was actually thinking of doing this when I first started, and then I got really entrenched in accessibility. So now I'm kind of doing both. They hire all majors because like we hire all majors for QM. And good writing or editing skills are required, which is why QM transfers are pretty common because they already have established that they can write. So yeah, why work at Epic? So first of all is the work culture. So you really get out what you put in. If you put in a lot of effort, you get recognized for it. The job I had before this was at Walmart, where pretty much no matter how much you worked or how much you accomplished, they just give you more work. And if you work hard at Epic, you can get lots of opportunities to transfer teams or roles or just get more responsibilities. And it's surprisingly easy to move up in the company if you want to. I personally don't really want to, but there are a lot of paths to do that. There's also a really good feedback culture. It's supported and encouraged. There's actually a class on it when you do orientation. This is great for me because I have anxiety, so it's really nice to know when I'm doing something right or if I could be improving something. And it's also nice to know that I can like give people feedback without fear of them like retaliating or getting annoyed. So that's really great. Oh, why did it do that? What the? Okay. Creativity and improvement are rewarded instead of stifled. If you think a system or process could be improved, people will at least hear you out and consider what you have to say. I've personally been able to change a lot of stuff on my team. Like I said, I pretty much rewrote entire guides, and people weren't like, oh, no, you can't do that. You're not like leadership or anything. And especially since my team is a newer one and a smaller one, there's a lot of stuff to improve. So we've all kind of been working together to make things the best they can be, and it's super rewarding. There's also a flexibility in schedule. We have core hours where you should be on campus, but like if you dip out for an hour or so to go to an appointment, like no one's gonna get mad at you. And you can also come in a little earlier or a little later. So that's really nice because I really like to work early in the morning. So I come in at like 7 and then leave by 3, or leave by 3:30 usually, depending on how long of a lunch I take. And finally, there's a lax dress code. The dress code is literally just if we have visitors, wear clothes, and we always have visitors. If you're on a customer site, you do have to follow their dress code, but on Epic's campus, I literally wear pajamas to work sometimes. Like there's pretty much no dress code as long as you're wearing clothes. So yeah, stability and benefits. The first one and biggest one for me is there's incredible health insurance. We have 3 health plans to choose from, and since all of them are customers, we have like a special agreement with them. The premium is $120 a month, but literally everything is covered pretty much. There's like a few exceptions, but you basically don't pay for anything except prescriptions, and the prescriptions are like maximum $25. So to put it into perspective, I paid $20 for an $800 prescription and $5 for another prescription. And I also get blood work done regularly at no cost, and I have a surgery scheduled that is also not going to be of any cost to me. All my checkups are covered. My eye appointments are covered. It's super great. Like, especially in America where insurance is kind of not great, having this good insurance is fantastic. We also have competitive pay and yearly raises. They pay competitively based on the industry. You can reach out to HR for more details for what they're hiring at currently. You also get a yearly raise based on performance in the job market, which kind of goes back to you get out what you put in. My raises have been really, really good because I put a lot of effort in. Another really big one for me is no mass layoffs. In its history as a company, Epic has never done layoffs, even during COVID. This is because healthcare is a very stable industry, and also the company is constantly growing. So when there are economic issues, they can simply stop hiring instead of hiring more people, and they don't have to fire the people that they already have. So that's super nice, especially again because I have anxiety. And finally, this is probably the most well-known benefit outside of Epic, is the sabbatical. Starting at 5 years, you get 1 month of extra vacation every 5 years. And if you use this time to travel to a country you've never been, Epic pays for the flight and pays you a stipend for lodging and expenses. And you can either take a 1 month sabbatical or 2 2-week ones. So this is like the big one. Like everyone loves sabbatical. I have already figured out where I want to go for mine. I want to go to Iceland. So my first one. So and then the campus. So the campus is very large. It's still growing. This is the campus. It's definitely bigger than Georgia Southern, like a lot bigger. There are currently 6 campuses within the campus, each with 3 to 8 buildings, and they're all themed. They're currently building 2 more. We also all have individual offices. We don't have cubicles. You either are alone in your office, which I'm alone in my office because I do a lot of screen reader testing, so I specifically requested one, or you might have one office mate. So it's not like you're constantly surrounded by tons of people, which is really nice. A lot of people describe it as a cross between a college campus and a theme park. All the buildings are themed. There's a bunch of wacky art everywhere. It's super cool. There's 2 slides on campus, and there's also a treehouse, which is a conference room. And all the buildings have an indoor route during the winter. And this campus is specifically designed to sort of encourage creativity. Because if you're working on a tough problem, you can just kind of walk around and clear your mind for a bit and maybe get inspiration from a random place. So this is the Treehouse conference room. It is actually a conference room. I would make meetings there if it were closer to my office, but it's on the other side of campus. This is my building, Mystery, which is themed after mysteries. There's a lot of literature type stuff in it. So like Edgar Allan Poe, Agatha Christie, there's also an entire floor with Clue-themed conference rooms, which is pretty cool. This is the farm campus. I actually wrote a lot of this presentation while sitting in this sky bridge right here, which the sky bridge is super nice. It's the farm campus is beautiful, like very scenic. And this is King's Cross. This is one of the 3 big dining areas on campus. We also have some smaller ones, but this is one of the big ones. The food is really good. They have actual culinary people who cook all the food, and it's at cost, so it's usually $2 to $5, $2 to $5. Or if it's something more expensive, like steak, it's usually like $8. So it's still really good priced food, and it's like really good tasting. And then finally, probably the most important thing about working here is the work is very meaningful. It's hard and there's a lot of it, but it's super important, impactful, and rewarding. This is definitely probably the most important to me working at Epic. We say with the patient at the heart, and it's one of the core things we think about in our software. What we do directly impacts a person's quality and understanding of care, whether you're on billing, scheduling, or a clinical team. On my team, for example, we want to make people's health insurance as easy to understand as we can. And that's a lot of why I take accessibility so seriously. People deserve and need to know and understand the coverage that they have. It's also super nice to interact with end users. They do really care about their patients. I remember I was on an immersion for an end user. She was like this older woman who was genuinely worried because babies weren't automatically covered by insurance in their system. So she was worried that the parents were going to be billed out of pocket if they needed medical attention and they weren't yet marked manually. She constantly referred to them as like our babies or my babies, and stressed that it was like one of the most important things to her. And it really made me realize how much even insurance end users do care about their members. And there's so many other situations I could list off. But this is just the first job where I've actually felt like my work has an impact, and it's really nice. And yeah, this is the last slide. I managed to speed run through the second half of that, so that was impressive. You can scan this QR code if you want, or click this application link. I can send it in the. Oh, let me see if I can get this to. I can try to send it in the chat. Give me 1 second. Is it still sharing?
It is still sharing.
Cool. I'll send the link in here in case the QR code doesn't work. But yeah, I guess if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat.
Yeah. So I see 2 questions. Do you want me to read them or do you want to read them?
I have the chat open, so just give me a second. I was trying to use the wrong. Oh, that's a direct message.
I can copy it and put it to everyone.
Okay,
You can
sounds
focus
good.
on the questions.
All right. So, in your opinion, was the relocation worth it? I definitely think it was. I didn't really know where I was going to go. Again, the area is super nice. There's a lot more to do than in Statesboro, not to crap on Statesboro. I was very nervous about relocating. They do actually pay you a relocation stipend. Mine was $5,000 moving from Statesboro. So it will probably be similar, but I can't say for sure. That would be a question for HR. The position you were invited to apply for was PM, but you feel like you would fit more as a QM. I would bring that up with the recruiter and say, hey, I think I would be better as a QM. Can I apply for that instead? Because you might end up in the same situation as me, where they're just like, you should probably apply for this instead after you take the personality assessment. What advice do you have for graduates looking for a job in your industry? Really just being very detail oriented and having good writing skills, because a lot of companies in general nowadays are looking for good writing skills. So you're already kind of ahead of the game, because it's easier to teach someone healthcare than it is to teach them how to write. And what obstacles did I encounter during the transition from college to my first career? How did you overcome them? I would probably say, I guess just getting situated up here was big, because like obviously I didn't know anyone. I pretty much used my savings to move up here. My only family in the area was like my aunt who lives in a nearby city. And really how I overcame that was just meeting people, really trying to get my life together. And I think I've done a decent job. So it's I guess just keep pushing forward and really make sure you find people if you don't have any directly close to you.
Do you have any tips for interviewing that might be useful for the students? Obviously, you did well in your interview.
Yeah, so actually something that really helped calm my nerves, I actually just looked up common interview questions, and even though they asked me different questions than what I found, it really helped me feel more confident because I was thinking about certain topics. I also recommend, specifically if you want to apply for a QM position, some of the major skills you would need are being able to give and receive good feedback. That's really important. And then having an eye for detail. So those are just some things to think about. Is it easy to make friends at work? It sounds like there may be opportunities to connect with people at Epic. Yeah, so during orientation, like I said, it's very similar to like college orientation. The first month is pretty much all just like getting you acquainted with the area and the campus and like what Epic does. So you're in the same class with a lot of people, and they're all in the same boat as you. Like people are coming from all over the country, so they don't know anyone either. I have a group of really good friends now, who I met at orientation, and through them I have met other people. Um, and there's also just lots of groups at Epic. So like if you like chess, you can join the chess group and you might meet people there, or like Magic the Gathering, or whatever you're interested in. And then another question. What would you recommend for someone who's anxious having to move out of Georgia for the first time for work? Um, I guess just like do it. Like I really was also anxious. Um, I kind of had I was kind of forced because I had quit Walmart and I really needed a job. Um, so I was like, well, I really like this company. I need a job, so I guess I'm doing this. So I don't really have any good advice, unfortunately, because that was also something I was anxious about, and I was just kind of forced into it. So, um, well, not really forced, but like encouraged into it. Yeah, she has a lot of opinions. Would you believe me if I said this isn't even her being loud? Um, the second is, what is the experience of being a fresh graduate in interviews? Pretty much everyone, like 90% of the people who apply to Epic are fresh graduates. So they're expecting you to be pretty green. Um, really just talk about like what you did at college. If you have any other prior work experience that could be applicable, bring that up. If you have any internships or anything that you think would be applicable, bring that up. Um, and are all the jobs in Wisconsin, or are there other campuses? So everything is in Verona, for the American stuff. I think there's like a few people who are in a Rochester one, and then we also have some international offices, but you have to like specifically transfer to those. They always hire people to go to Verona. So there is like opportunity for you to work in like Berlin or the UK, but that would have to be after you start. They just start people in Verona.
So I have one more question. So you mentioned like attention to detail and your writing workshops preparing you to be able to give and receive feedback. Are there other kind of skills that you gained from your English major or just your experience at Georgia Southern in general that helped you um, feel like you were able to succeed in the interview, but also, you mentioned you don't have to know how to do this. They train you. Um, so what in your experience maybe helped you be prepared to kind of receive that training and kind of hit the ground running from there?
Yeah, so a big thing is confidence. I have historically not had a lot of confidence. And actually, my time at Georgia Southern, mostly because of Professor Valeri, I actually became a lot more confident, and that kind of helped me learn more during training. Another thing is coming in with good writing skills. That's like the hardest thing to learn about the job. Like that's the thing, like documentation is the thing most new QMs struggle with if they don't have a writing background. So definitely like writing skills are very useful as a QM, because it already puts you ahead there. And then everything else is just kind of, if you pay attention in the classes, like you can pick it up pretty easily. And just being not even really just confident, but also being driven and being able to sort of just keep moving forward and keep trying to do your best, even if like you feel like you're not doing very well. Um, because it can feel very overwhelming in the first few months because healthcare is very complicated and you feel like they're just throwing a lot of information at you. So just not crumbling to that and being able to um, continue learning and improving. And yeah. Um, Braden said they were invited to one in Madison, Wisconsin. That is close to Verona. It's about 20 minutes away. Madison is the capital of Wisconsin, so that might be why they put that there. But yeah, Verona is like just outside Madison. It's in the same county, which is Dane County. So I actually live in Madison and I live 12 minutes from Epic. So
You should have said that from the start. Madison is an awesome
I
town.
did. I did say that. Wait, let me go
Sorry, I
back to
guess
it.
I missed it.
Wait. Now I need to prove myself. Um, uh, I don't know how PowerPoint works, to be
Well,
honest.
no worries. I just went to, I mean, I went to I was in Iowa City at the Iowa workshop, and everybody was talking about Madison, Wisconsin, and what a great place it is to live because it's got so much culture and things going on. So just wanted to say that it's a great place to go.
I did say it.
I
I
believe
think you
you.
did say there's a city nearby.
Yeah, it's the capital. It's a super nice city because it's like it's not like it's not a small town like Statesboro or Verona, but it's also not like a huge city like Atlanta. So it's not like super overwhelming. It's like a very good middle ground where there's a lot of stuff to do, but like it's not too much. So I really enjoy living here.
Does anyone have any other questions for Alex? That seems like a really cool job.
Yeah, I thought it was a scam at first, based because I obviously researched it before I applied, and I was like, this does not seem real that they're just like asking me to apply. Um, it is a really cool place to work.
And it seems like a really supportive work environment. Like they're really investing
Mhm,
a lot of time and energy and resources into
mhm.
their employees,
Oh yeah,
which
oh yeah,
sounds great.
yeah. I
Any
think I'm
other
definitely
questions?
gonna. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Alex.
I was just gonna say I'm definitely gonna stay here for a while. So
I'm just like one of the highest recommendations for a job. As the employees want to stay.
I think that also it seems like you have the advantages of the big company where you have growth opportunities, training, and all this stuff. But the no layoffs is really amazing
oh
because that's
yeah.
something that always scares me about corporate America, right? It's just like, oh, you
Mhm,
get into these companies and one day you go to work and by the
mhm.
end of the day, half of your colleagues are gone, or maybe you too. So, I think that's huge.
And I know
It,
during COVID they were having some like economic troubles, but they did like a lot to make sure that they didn't have to lay anyone off. Like they pretty much didn't hire anyone new for a while. Um, the raises were a little worse, but everyone still had a job. So
well, one last thing is just I'm really proud of you. I don't know if I have any right to be, but someone that I've spent a lot of time with, training, I guess you can call it training, talking about writing and all this stuff. Um, I'm just really happy that you were able to find this type of position, and you seem really happy. And I really want to encourage people. It's like even if you're very creative, you can still be happy at jobs like this, right?
mhm.
So I just wanted to know if you wanted to say something about that.
Yeah, and I still work on like fiction writing like in my spare time. And also just at Epic in general, like I said, there's a lot of different groups that you can join. So there's like creative writing groups. There's also every year we have a giant conference called the UGM, which stands for Users Group Meeting. And that's basically where a bunch of customers come on campus. And before a lot of the presentations, they have skits and they send out a call to like creative people to like write the skits. So like even within the job, you can still be doing fun creative stuff and writing and not just doing like technical writing. Um so it is really cool. There's kind of and especially like the campus as well. There's a lot of nerdy stuff on campus. A lot of just things that are meant to inspire you. So it's super neat.
Well, thank you for coming here and letting us know about this.
Yeah, thank you for letting me come and talk about this.
Yeah, thank you. Seems like they're reaching out to some of our students right now. So this
Oh,
is
wow.
very useful information for folks to have.
Yeah. Like I said, that's how I found out about them. They reached out to me on Handshake. So,
Good
and
to
I think
know.
this is they actually made this into an official recruiting event, which kind of surprised me. So I actually get paid to be here.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Good for you.
but that's pretty cool. But this is like the first recruiting event they've actually done for Georgia Southern. So
Well, hopefully we'll see more of them.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
let's
definitely.
send you here in person sometime.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'm hoping that they'll set up like an in-person career fair at some point, because then I can go back and not have to pay for it.
It's not
And
quite the same as coming to Iceland, but
yeah, and to the people who said thank you for coming and listening to me ramble for an hour. So I appreciate it. I like talking. I used to not, but I do now.
Alex, thank you so much for coming. Your accessibility project was awesome, and I'm glad you're getting to use some of those skills.
Yeah, I was wondering where I had seen your name before. And then you sent that in the chat and I was like, "Oh yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that class because I would have never realized how passionate I am about accessibility." Um,
Well, and you get to use the style guide.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. We actually used the Microsoft style guide, which if I remember correctly, we did talk about in your class.
Yep.
Because we have our Epic style guide and then everything that's not in the style guide goes from whatever is in the Microsoft style guide. So
The style manual and the corporate style guide.
yeah.
I'm so glad you get to do editing. I knew that was always your passion, and I'm so glad you get to do it.
Oh yeah, I'm super excited. I've been editing like since I was in middle school and people were asking me to edit their essays. So
Yeah, your poem was How Much You Hate Comma Splice for my
yeah.
creative writing class, which was the other thing that I was like, okay, this person has to be a creative writing major because that was just so awesome. So
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for supporting me, Professor Valeri, because like I honestly probably would not be in this position if not for you.
oh
Like if
no,
you
don't say
hadn't
that.
made me more confident in myself.
Oh,
So I do really appreciate that.
thank you.
Maybe I'll stop the recording.